So what happened to Ambilight? Well, that's a whole story by itself, and I'm going to do a deep dive video on that topic. But long story short, it's tied up in patents and copyrights, and Philips stopped making TVs altogether in 2008. Sure, TVs were made since then with the Philips name, licensed out to companies such as Funai, but they did not license out the Ambilight technology itself. And at this point, nobody can legally sell a TV with built-in LEDs on the back. And that's where the DIY community stepped up. Now, there are several projects out there, but in my experience, HyperHDR, which is a fork of the original Hyperion project, does the best job. In late 2021, I installed LED strips around the back of my living room TV. However, things got complicated because at that time, you could not find a Raspberry Pi computer anywhere. Chip shortage, shipping crisis, whatever the hell the reason, they just weren't available. So my living room setup actually involves a Windows PC and a separate ESP32 microcontroller and a bunch of other unnecessary crap. This year, out of nowhere, the Raspberry Pi 4 is suddenly back in stock and available again.
It's a wonderful day for pie.
Even more wonderful, the Raspberry Pi 5 has just been released this year as well. However, for this project, we're using the Pi 4 Model B. The 5 uses more power, costs more money, and it's honestly overkill for this particular project. And they do plan to continue manufacturing and supporting the 4 for at least the next few years. Now, everything used in this project is linked down below in the description, but I recommend clicking here and going to my companion website, JustinNelsonsProjects.com, where I walk you through all the necessary hardware and software and show you just how easy this project can be. If you're allowed to use a pair of scissors,
you have to be careful with scissors,
and a screwdriver, no soldering iron, no crimp tools, no electronics or Linux knowledge required. Just follow my instructions, pick up all the right components, and you can knock this project out in an afternoon. Now, full disclosure, all of the links are Amazon affiliate links. Using my links helps support this channel, and it adds nothing to your cost. But there is one component that I actually designed myself, and it's handmade, and it's what ties everything together. Purchasing my level shifter / adapter cable is what makes this a no solder, no crimp, plug and play project with the entire setup taking up only a single wall outlet. More information about my level shifter is at the end of this video, so stick around for a special limited time offer. In the meantime, I recommend watching the rest of this video, and once you realize, hey, I can do this, then click my link, buy the components you'll need, and be sure to save this video so you can follow along once you receive all the components. I'll include chapters so that you can skip this whole introduction part when you're actually ready to get started. I recommend doing this project before the big game in a couple of months. It's not about the size of your TV screen, it's about the immersive experience you simply won't find anywhere else. Your house will be the place to watch the game, and it's a great conversation starter on top of all of that. So before we get started, note that this only works with an external video source, whether that's your cable box, satellite TV box, Roku, Fire Stick, Apple TV, anything will do just fine. And if your cable or satellite box doesn't have streaming apps built in, check with your provider. Most providers will give you an upgraded box at no extra charge that includes all the streaming apps. Because we have no way to access the video from inside the TV, this will not work using the smart TV's built-in apps. So you will need an external video source for this to work. So with that out of the way, let's jump right into the hardware part. Now, obviously, you'll want to unplug everything from the back of your television. If it's a wall mount TV, have somebody help you remove it, and then you're going to want to lie it flat on a bed in either case. And you want it screen side down with the bottom facing toward you, toward the edge of the bed. And if it has feet or a stand, that can kind of hang off the edge there. Now that your TV is on a bed and you have all of your components laid out, I'm going to throw it over to past Justin, who shot this segment over a month ago. I've learned a lot over the last 2.5 years of using Ambilight in my living room, and I've simplified the process. This whole part assumes that you have picked up everything on my list, including my homemade level shifting adapter and these little corner L brackets, BTF lighting, the 10 amp power supply. If you bought everything that I specifically recommended, then we're good to go. The first thing we need to do, we're going to go ahead and get this laid out. Now, we're not going to stick it yet. What we're going to do is First of all, pick where we want it. Now this TV happens to have a nice curve on all three sides that we're dealing with. We're not doing the bottom. Now it does have buttons here, so I kind of use those as a guide of where to be in this direction, just past the button, so I can still reach in there and press those if I need to. Now your starting LED should be right about 2 inches up from the bottom. Reason being is we're about 1.5 inches in, and then little trick you can do while you're just mocking things up, good old blue tape that comes off without leaving any residue. Get some of that in a couple of spots to keep you in place. And then I'm just following along these screw hole lines because it happens to be a nice straight line. So we're going right to that screw hole. So hopefully you're getting a good shot of this, because this is where it gets really important. We need to decide where to put the corner brace. Well, this is what it looks like with the brackets on. This is what it looks like before you put the brackets on. I just want to butt in real quick and mention that this is the second time I've installed Ambilight on this particular TV. You can see the adhesive left over from when I ripped the old LED strip off. Now, there were two main reasons for this redo. First, I cheaped out and I bought a no-name LED strip, and it began failing within a couple of weeks. And secondly, I folded the strip around the corners rather than using proper corner brackets. So the lesson here is, don't try to substitute and use cheaper components. It will bite you in the end. So with that, back to the video. So in the corner, we want to make sure that we're going to be about similar distance. In fact, there's a row of screw holes right there I'd like to use. So if this were plugged on to this, that puts us pretty much right where I want it. So we're going to cut right here. So once you've decided where you're going to cut it, make sure you cut it right in the center of the pad. Now with that, we are going to move this down a little bit, and I need to attach the next bit, which is our top row. So we're going to go ahead and take that off for a moment. I'm going to peel back just a little bit of this. Now you're going to be fighting this tape a little bit, but I prefer it this way because I think it makes it stick in there better. There's a little groove down here. You want to be down there and then get it under those three little tabs there. Like I said, you're going to fight that glue a little bit, but that's fine. Now we've got good contact, and then when you close that, that ensures that it stays that way. And now you've got somewhere you can peel, but we're not there yet. So this is going to go pretty much like this. The next step is to take that other end that we just cut off the roll, go ahead and get it into place in the same manner, making sure the arrows are pointing the right way, but they will be if you cut it that way. And we're going to slide that very carefully and make sure it goes under those three silver tabs so that you can tell that it's over top of them, and then get that to click. So now we have our corner sort of decided now, because I want to be lined up with these side screw holes and with these top screw holes. So let's tape on either side of the corner. The corner is actually going to kind of free hang because of this weird shape on this television. We're going to put a piece of tape here. Again, this is all just to hold it until we are ready to apply it permanent. What I'm mostly worried about now is getting the top row. Roll this out nice and straight. It doesn't have to be perfectly straight at this stage, but as straight as you can, and pull it a little tight. And now we've come to where we need to decide where we're going to cut that end. And let's go ahead and assemble the other L. And I'll do this in front of the Sony here so that you can see these just go in the same way. Make sure it's in the little groove there, otherwise it will not catch underneath those three pins. So that's as far in as that will go. And then you just wrap it around and click it. And I'm going to go ahead and open the other side so it's ready. Same thing here. Get that up under there and clicked in. Make sure you hear that little click. And now what we need to do is determine where to cut this. When that lines up there, it looks like this is where we want to cut. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Again, as close to the center as possible. Get this hooked in. So we're going to go ahead and slide that under, click it into place. Before we do this side, here's the easiest way to make sure you get the same number. Roll this out, and we want to cut this right here. This is our end, our very last LED that'll be at the bottom. So now at this point, we need to count these. This is very important. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So each side has 38. You should bring a pen and a piece of paper and mark that down. We also need to count the top, but we can do that after we install. Be very careful, by the way, on this final strip that you don't flip it around. Make sure the arrows are pointing in this direction direction. Let's take the tape off. Now, like I said, I did already clean this with Windex. We want to take a paper towel. You can use alcohol swabs, or if you have a bottle of isopropyl, just get a paper towel, and along that entire length, everywhere you're going to stick LEDs, this will get all the dirt off. I'm going to start putting stuff out of the way. The best way I find is to start at the top. So I'm going to go ahead and peel this whole top all the way across. What you want to do is get it to where you're evenly spaced on both sides, and then you're going to want to start in the middle, and then I'm going to work my way in each direction, pulling tight. So we're going to stop here. We're going to go ahead and get our input side. Once we're lined up to that screw hole and basically this edge here, we're gonna go ahead and there we go. Now that's gonna curve a little bit and stick up, and that's perfectly fine. So we've got this side and the top. Now let's do the same thing this way. Now we're gonna peel this final end, making sure it doesn't roll back on itself, and do pretty much the same thing on this side. So our LEDs are perfectly in place. Now, we know these are 38 and 38. Now that these are up here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 67 and 38. Remember that for me, guys. We need to decide where are we gonna put the Raspberry Pi. So we put it in its little bottom half of the case. If you bought the kit I recommended, make sure you follow the instructions and apply the heat sinks where necessary. You can run the fan on 5 or 3.3 volts, and it is a lot quieter on 3.3. So that's where I'm sticking the fan wire. Then my adapter cable. We're gonna skip that first 5-volt pin, and our red wire then goes on the second pin down on the outer side when it's facing this way. And you'll notice then there's a ground, then it skips to, and there's our green data wire. And coincidentally, the very next pin past that green one on the outer side is also a ground wire. With all that, all we have to do now is carefully make sure the SD card is not in, by the way, when you try to put these together. So where do we want the Pi? In my case, the last time I just stuck it right about here. I'm going to come out a little further so I can more easily reach that SD card if I need to. But the other thing we're doing differently, because I used permanent mounting tape the last time, that was a bad idea. So we are instead going to use some non-Velcro brand self-adhesive hook and loop fasteners. These seem to work pretty well. So for this, I want the fuzzy part on the TV and the grippy part on the Pi. So we're going to take this. Let me show you where I'm putting this, and I'll explain why. We don't need a lot. We don't want to block any of these vent holes, and these little feet are going to be in the way. So I've cut it to go right in between. We're going to go right up against the SD slot and down here, and now we're not covering any of those holes. Maybe just a little bit right there, but that's fine. And we're going to cut another piece the same length. Now in this case, because there's no SD slot, we're going to put that there, and it fits in between these little feet. Next up, we're going to take a little bit oversized piece of this, go ahead and stick it on there lined up, then we peel the adhesive backing. I always go a little oversized so when you pull it off and put it back on, you don't have to be exactly lined up, especially when you're reaching behind a television. So remember, SD goes that way, your ports are going to go that way. Just give it a good little shake and the Velcro will hold, and now we can remove the Pi if we need to get to that, replace the fan, do any kind of maintenance to it, and then just line it back up where it was, and we're golden. The power is going to come in right here. When you buy this particular 10 amp 5 volt power supply that VTF Lighting offers, it comes with a properly rated barrel connector adapter. So using a Phillips screwdriver, make sure that these are open. You'll see a plus mark. Put your red wire that you've already stripped a little bit of in there, and while holding it, tighten that down. Now, what to do about this dangly bit? Well, here's what I like to do. I'm going to take a bit of this, about that much. I'm going to go right about here. Pick a spot here. Peel that off, and what I want is I want this wire basically encapsulated there, but the important part is right here. We want that to be covered in sticky tape, because now we're going to cover all of that with this duct tape. Between the adhesion of the duct tape to the sticky foam tape, this is not going to go anywhere when you pull on that. And most importantly, you won't be pulling on your LEDs. Take a smaller piece. Just kind of keep that in place. And the nice thing about this is, if you need to take the Pi out, you can just unclip it, and that's it. This is what holds this together. And now, if this big old brick were pulling on this, look at that, it's pulling the whole bed. It's not going to pull on your LED strip. Now, we need to decide where we want this, because we've got a HDMI cable that it comes with that and a blue USB cable. Now, this is an awful long cable to just go from here to the TV itself. So I'm going to ditch that one and use one that I already have. It's a little higher quality cable, I think, too, but more importantly, it's shorter. Now, I'm plugging this into HDMI 1. Whatever input you choose, make sure you mark that down as well. And these little Velcro things can be handy. So we'll go ahead and run this to the HDMI output. Our input is going to come from our streaming setup, which means we probably want this somewhat accessible from the side. And I'm going to go this way so that I can reach in and get that plugged in when it's on the wall. Then we just have our USB cable. So if we mount this right about here, seems like a good spot that I can reach from the side, and then we plug our USB into one of the blue ports. So I'm just going to take this, flip it around, put a piece right about here, put a piece right here. Whatever you do, especially on a wall mount, make sure your bracket is going to leave you enough room. Now, of course, if you're on a stand, none of that matters. So we're going to go right about here and just fix that into place. Now, cable management, there's really not much, and I'm just gonna tie these two together with the Velcro that came on the HDMI cable. Whatever you need to do just to keep everything nice and neat. And if you like, I don't want to cover these vent holes though, so this is just to hold this whole thing a little closer to the TV, and that should be good. We're actually at the point where we could put this on the wall. But before we do, we want to plug it in just to see that the Pi powers up. Okay, so the Pi is trying to boot up. It's going to sit there and do like a boot loop because there's no SD card in there. But it's receiving its power from the LED strip, which is being powered by this. Simple as can be. Now, this video has taken months to put together, and you may notice I've pulled out most of my hair during the process. I'm kidding, I actually shaved my head in solidarity to help my sister, and if you like, you can check that video out up here. But back to the task at hand. Before moving the TV into its final position, let's get the Pi operating system installed. We'll take our SD card over to our PC or laptop and put it into the SD card reader. Ignore any Windows messages about formatting the media or any of that. Simply hit cancel if anything pops up from Windows. This may happen more than once during this process, as Windows does not understand the Linux file system we're about to install. So, following the website, we'll download the Raspberry Pi Imager tool from the official Raspberry Pi website. Install and run the tool as described on my website and follow the instructions. The most important bits to get right are: the OS you choose must be the Raspberry Pi OS Lite 64-bit. Number 2, you absolutely need to have your Wi-Fi SSID, password, and country correctly selected. The SSID and password are case sensitive. Number 3, write down the username and password you choose in this installer. These are also case sensitive. And finally, number 4, make absolutely sure you selected the correct drive to install on. I recommend making sure you do not have any other SD or USB flash drives connected, so there will be only one choice. No room for mistakes this way. So once you follow the instructions and write out the operating system, we'll remove the SD card from the computer and go insert it into the Pi label side down. Then we'll power up the Pi and move on to step 2 on my website tutorial. Now, the first boot of a fresh Pi install will take a few minutes. In fact, on screen here is a time lapse of what you might see if you had a monitor connected during that first boot. You'll notice that it reboots a couple of times, so take a few minutes, go make a sandwich, make sure you've given it enough time to finish this first crucial boot. Think about the first time you boot a fresh Windows PC. This is really no different. Future boot ups will be quite a lot faster than this very first one. Now, this is where we need to log into our Wi-Fi router. How to do this will vary depending on your router, so follow the instructions in step 2 for more on this. If you're doing this along with the video, go ahead and pause while you follow the rest of step 2. Now, once we've verified that the Raspberry Pi has been recognized by the router and assigned an IP address, we can now unplug the Pi if necessary and go ahead and put the television into its final position. Hook everything back up to the TV as normal and power everything up. the LED strip and thus the Pi, the television, and your input source. Make sure you've got a good picture passing through the capture device and viewable on the TV. At this point, I recommend putting on some content and adjusting your television picture settings to your liking. This way, when we calibrate the LED colors later, we'll be matching to our already calibrated screen settings. Now, while most Hyperion videos simply show fun, bright color patterns, you rarely see real-world examples of just plain old TV watching. This is because it is really difficult, but worth the time, to get the colors to match the screen as closely as possible, especially with more subtle colors. What you're seeing here are just some actual TV shows that I personally watch as they appear in real life, filmed from the vantage of where I generally sit. So keep this in mind later when we go to calibrate the colors. Now, with that out of the way, let's go back to the PC or laptop. Following the instructions on step 3 of the web tutorial, we want to download and install PuTTY for Windows. Even if you have a version of PuTTY already installed, go ahead and install the most recent version anyway. Just trust me on this. It'll save you a lot of headaches. From here, we'll follow the instructions on my website, which if you find differ at all from this video, the website will always be more up to date, as I can't change the video if things change in the real world, but I can and will update the website as needed. When you actually do this, I recommend simply doing the rest on your own. So this walkthrough is just so that when you do dive in, you'll have a feel of what to expect and how to best use the website as a companion. Feel free to skip this part of the video, but you may find it helpful to have watched me do a run through before tackling it yourself. Okay, so at this point we are on step 3, and I'm assuming you've installed PuTTY already. So I'm gonna do the same thing here and just type PuTTY in over here. Now, remember, we wrote down the IP address of our Raspberry Pi. Now, mine is 192.168.0.150 in this case. So I'm going to hit enter. Now, I'm getting this warning because if you've ever had a Pi installation already on that Pi, you're going to get this warning. Just hit accept. Otherwise, you won't get that warning. And put in the username and the password that you put in when you did the install. Now, what we want to do is side by side these windows. So the easiest way to do that is just grab the browser tab, take it and drag it all the way to that edge, and then all the other open windows you've got are going to show up here. So we want to click on PuTTY. So now we've got PuTTY on the right, logged into the Raspberry Pi. So as we go through, once you're logged in and you see all this stuff, which will vary a little bit, this is already a little different from what's on my website, but that's okay. This is all the same. Again, I'm just doing a brief run through here. So read everything on this web page, but essentially where you see the word copy, just click on it. It'll automatically copy it to your clipboard, and then over here you just right click and hit enter. So the first thing we need to do is update the app repository. So I'm going to click copy, and notice the little helpful text here that tells you what just got copied, and then just right click over here and hit enter. And this is going to do just a quick update to make sure it's got the most updated package repository. And now that that's done, the next one is to make sure curl is installed. Now, I've noticed in the latest version, curl is already installed, but let's do this anyway to make sure we've got the most recent version. And right here it says curl is already the newest version. That's okay, but we still want to run that to make sure. Now, netcat won't be installed, so that's the next step. Copy, right click over here, hit enter, and this is going to install netcat. Okay, that took a few seconds. Now we're going to download HyperHDR. Now that's a very long command line, which is where this whole copy paste thing comes really in handy, as you can see on the screen there. So I'm going to hit enter. Now that's downloading it to my home directory. So the next thing we need to do is install what we just downloaded. So I'm going to click the next line, copy, paste over here, and this part takes a few minutes. Okay, now that we've installed HyperHDR, you'll notice it shows what appears to be a little bit of an error message. That's fine, because our next step is what will fix what it thinks is an error. So we're going to actually edit a configuration file. So copy again, paste again. Now what this is going to do, and hit enter, of course, we're going to scroll down to where it says user equals %I, hold down control and press K, and that will delete that line. Then hold down control and hit S, that saves the file. Control X exits this. So we're going to copy that right there, or you can just type sudo reboot Now, as soon as you hit enter, as it says on the website there, PuTTY is going to disconnect because we've just restarted the Raspberry Pi. So now we give it a few minutes. So after giving it a couple minutes to reboot, we can always right-click right here and hit Restart Session. And then it's going to ask for the username and password again. So I'm going to type in what I put in. We're going to need this later. We're not going to use it right this second because now we're going to actually go and configure HyperHDR. Now what I like to do is take a new tab, drag it out, and then put it on the right side of the screen so we can still follow along over here. What we want to do is http://192.168.0.150 in my case, :8090. Whatever your IP address was for the Pi is what you put here, but the :8090 is important, and that will take you to the HyperHDR configuration screen. From here, I'm going to basically let you run through the web tutorial because this is subject to change as new versions come out. I don't want to walk you through a bunch of stuff just for the video to suddenly be out of date when version 20.0 comes out. However, I will always keep the website up to date over here, so this will always reflect the most recent version. So follow along with those instructions there, and again, you can have this on the same machine, get that initial setup, and at some point you're going to want to take that address onto a laptop or a cell phone into the room with the television so that you can actually tweak all the settings. Yes, you can do this all on your cell phone. So you can email that address to yourself, you can write it down, type it in manually, totally up to you. There we are, installed, running properly, and within a few minutes of following all of this over here, you're going to calibrate your colors, and everything else is pretty well self-explanatory. So we're going to go back to Studio Justin with the wrap-up. Now for the automation part. I'm simply going to recommend you use the website, as I'll be updating it anytime I find out how to directly communicate with more and more TV brands. At this point, you should be familiar enough to copy and paste commands and code from the website to the PuTTY terminal, so I'll simply leave with a couple of final thoughts, some of which I will spell out in more detail in the web tutorial. Firstly, remember, Ambilight is short for ambient light. As the name suggests, the lights behind your TV should not draw focus away from the screen. They should simply add to the overall ambiance of the program or film being watched. Subtlety is key here, so perhaps dial back the brightness and saturation levels in the video capturing tab in HyperHDR. You don't want the LEDs brighter and more vivid than the actual content on the screen. You know what? I was just about to upload this and I realized I forgot to mention why I don't do a bottom row on the bottom of the television. Most of it has to do with the fact that most people are going to have a sound bar or a TV stand or something else directly underneath the TV. So a bottom row really doesn't make a lot of sense anyway. There's a couple other reasons too. Even if it's on an open wall, you're going to see a lot of waist up videos, which means you're going to see their shirt just drag all the way down the wall. Never looks right. And a lot of programs are going to have a lower thirds bar that just doesn't need to be continued on down the wall. So it's a matter of personal preference, to be honest. If you want to put a bottom row on, feel free to get another L bracket and go ahead and do that. But I guarantee you that within a few weeks, you're going to go, you know what, go into HyperHDR and just set bottom to 0, basically disabling that bottom row. If you look at the original Philips Ambilight TVs, most of those were just a simple U going around the sides and the top. That's why we don't do a bottom row, at least I don't. Again, do however you want. It's just a matter of personal preference, personal taste. So back to well-dressed Justin. Finally, anytime you make major changes, be sure to back up your current configuration in HyperHDR under the General tab before making those changes. Then, by all means, play around with all the options and settings and get the best overall experience for you personally. Read the documentation, do Google searches, find out what all those extra features actually do, and just have fun until you get the best, most personalized experience with all the different kinds of content that you personally watch. Now, as promised, about my homemade adapter cable / level shifter. If you buy the Hyperion Bundle, you get the cable, 2 corner connectors, 2 alcohol pads, and 4 pieces of hook and loop fastener, generic Velcro. This avoids having to buy some of these components in large quantity when you only need a couple pieces. I also offer a cable only option for a few bucks less if you already have all the other little stuff. I haven't figured figured out the actual price as of this recording, but for a limited time after this video is released, I will be offering both options at a very discounted price and always free shipping in the continental United States. Visit my store or website for more details. All the links are below. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this video helpful, please consider supporting my channel either with a one-time super thanks below, or consider joining for a monthly contribution that'll go a long way towards helping the future of this channel. Along with that membership, you'll get a few perks like early access to certain videos and other perks as I come up with them. Mostly you'll be helping me keep this channel going, as I do have a lot of projects just over the horizon coming very soon. At the very least, please hit that like button, and if you aren't already, consider subscribing, which costs nothing but ensures that you don't miss any new content. With that, I hope you have a great 2024, and again, thanks so much for watching.